Greetings everyone and welcome to today's edition of GSMA's IoT WebTalk. The topic of today's webinar is Transformative IoT Beyond Connectivity and the Power of Partnership. We have a very exciting agenda ahead today. I'll be giving a brief introduction to Beyond Connectivity, and then we'll have Jan-Rik Vonk from KPN give a keynote presentation on smart farming, in particular weed elimination with 5G autonomous robots. Following Jan-Rik, I'll have a virtual fireside chat with Brendan Eves of Telia, and we'll talk about a range of different IoT solutions and services that Telia provides. Following the chat with Brendan, Yufei Wang from China Mobile and Jennifer Huang from Huawei will give a joint keynote on optimizing manufacturing performance through 5G, edge computing, and machine vision. Following their keynote, I'll give a brief overview of the 5G IoT manufacturing work being undertaken by the GSMA, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So at this point, I would like to point out to participants that on your right-hand side, you will see a grey button that says Q&A. So as we move through the session, if you do have any questions, please access that button and type your question in, and we'll come to the questions at the end of the session. A little bit about the GSMA. We are the Global Trade Association for Mobile Phone Operators. We represent over 650 mobile operators from around the world and over 350 ecosystem partners and industry partners. We undertake a range of activities such as holding the Mobile World Congress events. We undertake activities in advocacy and also technology. And one of our key areas of work in technology is the Internet of Things. So GSMA Intelligence predicts that there will be 25 billion IoT connections by 2025. And when we look at the IoT market in the GSMA and our work, what we're looking at is a big focus of our work is beyond connectivity. So there's general agreement that the revenue opportunity for connectivity is significant, but still perhaps only single digits, perhaps 5% of the overall revenue opportunity in the IoT. So a lot of the value and the revenue opportunities will come from value-added services and having services beyond connectivity. So we do a lot of work with mobile operators and ecosystem partners and also partners in other vertical industries to look at how can we develop the kinds of capabilities that operators need to be able to access those opportunities, and also what are the kind of partnerships that they need. If you're interested in the beyond connectivity space, we have a fantastic range of case studies available on our website, covering all sorts of different verticals from agriculture through to transport and smart cities. So I'd encourage you to go to our gsma.com/IoT/beyond-connectivity website to look at some real life proof points. And all these case studies are commercial. So it's a really great resource to be able to see some of the solutions and capabilities that are out there. We also spend a lot of our time working with our members on different cutting edge technologies and how they can be applied to the Internet of Things. So some of the areas we've been looking at are big data, machine learning, IoT edge computing, and also distributed ledgers or blockchain, and specifically how they can be applied to the IoT. So we have a number of reports coming out of that work, such as the case studies I mentioned earlier, but also things like guidelines, capability assessments and assessments of operator roles utilizing those technologies. So once again, I'd point you to the website if you're interested in those. But without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Jan-Rik Vonk from KPN for his keynote presentation.
Well, thank you for the introduction. Jan-Rik Vonk, within KPN, responsible for the vertical agriculture. And in modern times, we call this a try and bleed, egg tag. In other words, I'm currently involved in all kinds of stuff around like farmers and growers. And I will now start sharing my presentation if this all works out well. What I'm going to address is like the movement towards autonomous eating. What we're seeing here in the Netherlands is that as a telco, we get a lot of like questions about how we're going to handle autonomous driving, for example. Yeah, this one is going to focus specifically on agriculture. So what I'll initially do is I'll introduce you into the current IoT position of a telco in a specific sense, KPN. Next, I'll take you through the three horizon model of McKinsey and drag you along how we envision our IoT developments there towards autonomous. And last but not least, I'll show you what we have done in our 5G field lab in order to grow towards the stage which is now known within McKinsey as Horizon 3. For starters, this is what one of our literature studies shows and depicts as the environment for the technology stack of smart anything. You see connectivity at the center, but connectivity might be at the center, so telcos are at the center, but the actual added value is in the product area or in the product cloud area. And what we see ourselves doing there is that, for example, we have a KPN smart home solution. We also have like a platform which we call KPN Things. We try to evolve into that area, but we are really not known into that area. So people try to hang on to us as a connectivity provider. That's where we decided that we might want to have that changed. And agriculture is one of the leading examples where we're currently trying to do that. But first, what is our strategy behind this move? Well, what we're seeing in the old days was legacy. Nothing was seriously smart, but in the last couple of years, we've actually seen that move. And we have even gone so far as to deploy a national network, LoRa network. So we are actually combining for sensoring both the cellular technology with like over-the-top technology, as you would like to call it. This will actually help out all the sensors that are being deployed at present. And we see a lot of movement there. Moreover, we see a faster, larger growth in the wireless cellular connection than in the over-the-top connection. So people apparently do see some added value in the telco there. But sensoring is not in itself. We also have localization. And localization is something you simply cannot do from your network. 5G is promising, but it will not be specific enough for many solutions. So you see a lot of GPS, but we're currently working together with a couple of like startups in the ultra wideband area in order to deploy a measurement of localization in an indoor setting. And last but not least, what we're seeing for next year and thereafter is visual sensing. It's like there's a lot of camera technology combined with like artificial intelligence that's helping a lot of like farmers and growers to actually detect, for example, a plague or pest at an early stage, so they can actually solve it in a bio manner rather than use chemicals. The three you see here together is sensoring, localization, and visual sensing will fuse and will actually bring us robotization. And what we're currently doing in the experiments is looking at robots. Is okay. So what do they need? What are their wants? And how can we grow along with that industry? Because in the longer term, what we will see is that you're actually going to need it. For example, in the Netherlands, you've got two big areas where we grow with glass houses. In one area, we were unable to harvest 55 hectares last year due to the fact that we are lacking in manpower in order to harvest the crop. Robotization, therefore, is a must, and we are working hard on helping them out to grow there. One of the elements in it is like the enormous growth in data. It's like it's huge. Moreover, they will actually need it on real time. So you need to do something with your network in order to provide them that in real time. Because there's artificial intelligence behind it. So we're also looking into how are we going to deploy our 5G network to such an extent that we have edge computing at the right position. Because there are various positions where you can actually start using that one, but where is it most needed? And you simply do not want to do that investment a couple of times. You want to do it investment like preferably once. So it's helping us there as well to detect where we need to move. So what have we actually done? Well, the first time is in 2018. What we did there was like drone imagery. We use drone imagery to scan the fields, and what you see in the picture is like it's from Agrivac. It's a huge sprayer. The sprayer has like 3 positions with the mounts going down and spraying like the anti-weed solution. It's like large volume, medium volume, or low volume. So what we did once was do a test run without like the information from the drone, and it used X amount of X liters of spraying. We did it a rerun after the drone made the image, and we actually applied some AI on where he actually should use it. We already immediately saw a lowering of the usage for 30%. And then we did like a second run where we got more like information from the camera and had some training on the AI, and we were able to lower it with like 60%. So with like very minimal impressions from the drone and minimal effort by flying over the field like a couple of times, you also already get like a diminishing of 60% of like agricultural, basically it's a kind of poison, right? And you don't want to have that in your water. So based upon that one, we decided, okay, we're going to do it somewhat differently next year, because if we already have this one, we're going to move a step forward and actually go into robotics. That's what we did last year, and that's where the GSMA also published a white paper. This time it was like with an autonomous vehicle, and same thing, also spraying for a specific kind of weed in this case. And we were actually able to reach a 90, I believe 6% accuracy of getting the weed out, and with a very minimalistic usage of like, well, in this case, even Roundup. So that's something you do not want to have too much of. So we were very happy to see this evolve and actually to see this move on. And so we decided that we're going to go like next level this year, Corona providing, of course, because like it's setting us for a couple of like challenges. We're going to use swarm technology. So we're going to use a swarm of drones flying over the field and looking on where we actually should remove the weed, in combination with a couple of robots. So we are going to use dual swarm technology, both in the air and on the ground. And we're going to see how this is going to affect our network and what is actually needed on the data that is going to be processed. We've got no clue, to be honest, whatsoever. This is going to be one big test, and we might fail miserably, but it will learn us a lot on how autonomous behavior can or cannot be supported by 5G, and what we need to do in order to grow within our network to overcome the situations that we encounter here. So, as I said, this is something we're going to do this year. Corona providing, because like right now we should already be in the fields, do our first tests, but that's simply undoable. So we're already like somewhat lagging behind somewhat in time. And what we have done is that we have created new test fields. So we are sowing in the crops at a later stage. So we cannot actually harvest them, but we can actually do tests on them. So we have now a larger array of test fields where we can actually bring the various drones and robots on place and to see if it actually works. And why are we doing this? Why is this big focus of KPN on agriculture? Well, We are the second, like so-called greenest telco in the world. We're the greenest of Europe. We want to contribute on the future food, and there are like huge challenges. It's like the climate challenge. We can help with the climate challenge. The infertile soils, well, you already see what we're doing, and we're diminishing the amount of like basically poison for the soils, and that's where we can contribute as well. And agricultural productivity is something we attribute as well. So these are 3 out of the 5 elements of the big challenges facing the future of food. So it's not just that we are trying to help out like the evolvement of IoT, the evolvement of 5G. We also trying to do something worthwhile for the planet. That's it for now. Hope you enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Jan-Rik. Now we move to the second session of our webinar, which is my virtual fireside chat with Brendan Eves, who is VP and head of Division X at Telia Company. So to begin with, Brendan, would you be able to give us an introduction to yourself and Division X?
Yeah, sure. Morning, everybody. Good to be here. Division X is very much the growth and innovation arm of Telia Company, where we're, you could say, spearheading efforts into businesses that we believe have the potential to be significant revenue streams in the future. IoT is probably the most obvious, and it's certainly our biggest bet. But we're also doing, especially in the current times with the corona pandemic upon us, really elevated the amount of effort that we're putting into both data analytics and digital health. In addition to that, exploring a number of new areas, but these would be our three biggest bets today.
Fantastic. And you mentioned there that the Division X focuses on areas where you think there are new revenues. And so just building on that, on the revenue theme. So as I covered in the introduction, you know, we really believe that a lot of the value from Internet of Things will be around the value-added services space. And Telia, and, you know, many operators are working to get into that space, but, you know, it takes some time and some, you know, developing of the capabilities. But Telia has been really successful in, growing a leading position in both connectivity as well as value-added services. I believe that, you know, you have a high proportion of your revenues that do come from the value-added services space. So can you talk a bit behind that? So how do you organize yourselves and how do you address the market to enable that kind of performance?
Sure. Yeah, so I guess just to give some figures that sort of help put that in perspective a bit, we're probably around 45% of our IoT revenue value-added service today, the other 55 connectivity. If I take a step back for a minute, I think sort of important to sort of set the foundation a bit here, that we're really, really focused on trying to stay as horizontal as possible. So moving up the value chain, but that means really going from connectivity into a cloud-based IoT platform, and then being very, very selective which verticals that we go deeply in. And then sort of with that as context, where did that 45% come from? I think, you know, if I look back, so far that success has come from being pretty early movers into a couple of verticals, going very deep in the AMR or the meter reading space in Finland. And then also an area where we have a lot of focus is around transportation. So if you take sort of smart public transportation, I'd say is where we really started from, and that's been an interesting journey for us. Started out very much as a customer case. We looked at that customer case and said we think we've got something that's quite repeatable. So we acquired the key partner, the guys that were doing the onboard hardware or edge compute and the platform. Acquired that company, went aggressively in the Swedish market, went into the rest of our footprint, and then interestingly enough along the way we sort of looked at it and said what are the attributes of that case, and we've managed to pretty successfully take some of the things that we've been doing there and take them over into other sectors, utility, buildings, without having to do too much retooling. And that's really been behind I'd say the share, the 45%, but also the continued growth that we have in that area today.
Fantastic. And so let's deep dive into some of those verticals then. So for example, starting with transport, you just shared your great success that you have in transport. I believe you have about 60% of the share of buses in Sweden and 40% in Finland. So could you talk a bit more about those cases? For example, what kind of use cases on those buses do you enable? What kind of partners do you have, and in the local context?
Yeah. So, I mean, as I kind of just touched on, I guess, before, we ended up acquiring a company that was very much specialized around connected buses, you could say. And it really starts from, I guess, putting a digital platform on that bus. So I wouldn't say the sky is the limit, but the number of applications is pretty wide. What we try to do is to not be too specialist on any particular application. So again, we're doing the connectivity. Due to that acquisition, we actually have our own edge gateway. I'd say typically we want to stay away from having to do too much in the hardware space, but we found we had a very good product and couldn't find anything better on the market today, at least. So we've stuck with the hardware. And then we really put the platform in place that enables us to support all different types of applications. So whether it's onboard video, we're doing quite a lot in the ticketing space now, echo driving. Different parts of Europe have a lot of regulation around, like having alco locks, etc., on the buses. So it really depends on the public transport operator, what their requirements are. But by putting that platform in, it's quite simply, if there's an application available that could be added to the platform, in theory, we can add it. Then what we also need to partner with, I think, in that area as well is, very important is both the system integration and the guys doing the installation to make sure we've got good partners that can help us to actually get that out in a professional manner. And then I'd say sort of last but not least, we're doing quite a lot in the analytics space. But when you get into very, very deep specialized applications, there we're sort of teaming up with the guys that are building the algorithms that can be used to take our data, our capabilities to the next level. They tend to be very specialist consulting firms that are, I wouldn't even say vertically specialized, but micro vertically specialized.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. So moving on to another sector then, you did mention smart metering and utilities earlier on. Can you tell us a bit about your work in that area? You said, I think it was one of the first verticals that you really, you launched hard.
Yeah, I mean, we play different roles there, and it, very much depends. So, Telia company, leading position, pretty much all the Nordic and Baltic countries, but depending on the capabilities in each of those markets, in some cases, we're just purely focused on connectivity. In others, I mentioned Finland, we've historically gone a lot deeper and taken that prime role, of course, with partners supporting it. A lot going on in that space right now. We've just picked up a couple of major AMR deals, in this case, actually just focusing on the connectivity and what we can do around narrowband and LTE-M here in Sweden. We will see how we play some of the other opportunities that are coming up, as those very old legacy agreements sort of come up for renewal, whether we take that prime role or whether we support. But we're also sort of gone into a number of other areas, and I touched before on repurposing what we had done in smart public transport. So we had a great case here in Stockholm where we essentially slightly retooled our capabilities and worked with the guys doing the municipality or the city building heating here. So giving them basically that edge compute IoT platform capability. And more recently in Norway, adding narrowband sensors to the power grid that's helping to give the supplier their pretty much lifetime visibility, you could say, of what's going on in the network. That obviously enables them to be much more dynamic in how they're handling things, which is, of course, good for their own efficiency. I think I read, looking deeper into that case, that they at times have managed to improve capacity by up to 25% by having that real-time data, which is incredible. And then also from a sustainability angle, actually being able to prioritize the green energy by having that data available to them firsthand. So quite broad what we're going into. But again, I'd sort of just touch on trying not to be building specialist applications, but more taking our core capabilities, partnering up, and then helping different customers to solve different use cases.
That's great. And you mentioned in your response there a little bit around the sort of utilities and buildings efficiency, I think. And so actually buildings and property is forecast to be the highest growth and the highest value sector for IoT in 2025. So what kind of experience have you had so far, and how you were addressing that space?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit, again, similar to what I just said on utilities. It's quite broad. Again, funnily enough, the company I mentioned that we acquired in smart public transport also happened to have a fairly significant position in elevator communications. So as a result of that, we're I think connecting something like, or our hardware is used in connecting something like 100,000 elevators today across Europe. We've been working quite a bit with, quite a niche case, but or quite a specific case, should I say, with like building climate monitoring. But more recently, a couple of things that are sort of really taking us in a new direction, and deploying some pretty interesting applications. We're working with our own system integration operation and a specialist property consulting company, Trans, to build a digital twin for a major commercial building development going on in Norway. And then last but not least, we recently reported a significant deal here in Sweden where we team up with a building owner to basically give them a platform to sort of handle some of the immediate building management needs that they have, connecting 30,000 apartments. But it also gives them, of course, a platform to add further services and applications in the future. And again, unlikely we're going to be building those specific applications, but I think we play a key role in both sourcing and orchestrating those type of applications for our customers.
And that's great. And wrapping around some of the verticals we've spoken about, like transport, to some extent utilities and property and buildings as well, is this sort of sometimes referred to as a vertical, but I'd call it this kind of area of smart cities, which, can have its own challenges as well. So we've done a lot of work in the smart city space. Of course, you've got to deal with political cycles and all sorts of other things. So, but there's been a lot of focus on it over the last few years, and some big numbers, big spend numbers spoken about as well. So how do you rate the opportunity for sort of the broader smart city space in some of your markets?
Yeah, I mean, if I look at the opportunity overall, obviously, I think, there's huge potential in that space. To be honest, I think it's an area that, it would be wrong to say that we're steering clear of it. But I think, to be clear, I'd say it's very, very unlikely that on scale we come out and launch a smart city offering anytime soon. On the contrary, we really want to make sure that we've got that horizontal platform capability that might support the guys that want to go after that type of space more aggressively. I think some of the applications I mentioned, where we are going deeper, they obviously fit into that wider concept, whether it's things we're doing in smart public transport, things we're doing, in the building space, or with our crowd analytics, location insight type products. But probably going to be a different type of player that's pulling all of that together and taking it as a complete proposition. So we just want to make sure that we're being really true to what we are, which is essentially taking ourselves from a telecoms operator to an IoT operator. and then be very, very focused on which applications we go deeply in, and not spread ourselves too thin or boil the ocean, so to speak, there.
Yeah, that sounds great. In fact, I was going to ask you, as we wrap up, what would your best piece of advice be? And it might actually be your last points around, your horizontal approach and not boiling the ocean. Would you agree with that, or what sort of advice would you give to say other operators or partners addressing the IoT space?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's no one size fits all, right? But I think it's really important to be sort of clear on where your strategy, where your focus is. We certainly found, looking back, we were probably a little bit too vertically focused. Any opportunity that came up would be jumping on it. To some degree, that's probably been good for us because it's given us that sort of early momentum. At the end of the day, if you're not solving a customer problem, you're not going to have any money anyway. But what we've certainly found now as we look to scale, we simply can't spread ourselves too thin. We've found maybe, it's very market dependent that we got a good window of opportunity to take that role between the hyperscalers, we're predominantly building on Azure, and the application provider. That will work for some, it won't work for others. But what I'm absolutely sure about is that when you start trying to solve customer problems, you need to have deep vertical expertise and knowledge, and it's going to be pretty hard to build that up, pretty expensive to build that up, even if you could do it, if you're going too wide in at an application layer. So just being very focused and putting your effort into where you take your bets, I guess would be my advice.
Fantastic advice. And thank you so much for this chat, Brendan. You've been really illuminating. It's been fantastic hearing about your work.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And so now we come up to our final keynote presentation, which will be a joint presentation, as I mentioned earlier, from Yufei Wang from China Mobile and Jennifer Huang from Huawei. They will be presenting on optimizing manufacturing performance through 5G edge computing and machine vision. So I'd like to hand over to Jennifer now to start their presentation.
Okay, very good. So hello everyone, this is Jennifer Huang from Huawei Technologies. It's my plan today to bring you an example, especially higher intelligent factory project, to demonstrate how we optimize manufacturing performance through 5G edge computing and machine vision. So with support from GSMA, this project was jointly done by Huawei Technologies and Mobile and Huawei. So go next page. So this is the whole picture of Huawei world's first 5G plus AI interconnected factory based on 5G DN. This factory was located in Qingdao Zhongde Industrial Park, China. That is an extra large refrigerator factory. It was launched in July last year. That actually I was one who triggered and joined the launch event. There are various kinds of 5G scenarios planned at the time and later on implemented in the higher factory across the whole process of manufacturing, including 5M, 1E, that's measurement, main, machine, material, method, and environment. This 5M, 1E were achieved by applying 5G plus machine vision, 5G plus AI collaboration, 5G plus smart devices, etc. Taking 5G plus machine vision, for example, it's 100 scenarios such as quality inspection, assembly guide, and so on. And as a result, by applying the solution, the product quality was improved by 28%. Similarly, 5G plus AI can enable man-machine AI training and remote maintenance so as to reduce the device downtime by 25%. In addition, 5G plus smart devices, AI plus smart transportation, plus smart energy, and digitalized knowledge can further improve efficiency, energy cost, as well as the quality to an important extent. All these achievements rely on underlying network that is so-called 5GDN. So what is 5GDN? 5GDN represents 5G deterministic networking. That is with 3 foundations composed of dynamic intelligent network slicing, high-performance heterogeneous MEC, and cloud-native ultra-distributed architecture. So go next page. Okay, next page, please. Okay. So the concept of 5GDN was first one proposed by Huawei in May last year. And in order to further practice the benefits of 5GDN, one alliance, so-called 5GDNA, was launched in June 2019 at Mobile World Congress in Shanghai, that has currently developed more than 80 members. Smart manufacturing or industrial internet is one of the most important vertical groups in the alliance. Haier, Huicui, China Mobile, and Huawei are all former members in the work group, and all members have been working together, both technically and commercially, on several key topics, such as machine vision. So please go next page. Because the Haier project is highly relevant to edge computing, so I'd like to elaborate a bit more about Huawei MEC solution. Huawei MEC is mainly comprised of 3 characteristics. One is ubiquitous connectivity. Another 2 are about computing and innovation beyond connectivity. Ubiquitous connectivity means it can provide on-demand service continuity, policy-based traffic distribution, layered protection, and edge UPF. And ultra-performance and heterogeneous computing means the product Huawei provides, named E9000H, can provide high integration, high performance with heterogeneous hardware computing and simplified networking with free-off switch. Moreover, Huawei MEC can provide open platform and fast provision for third parties that can promote commercial launch and efficiently facilitate innovation anytime and anywhere. Next page. Okay. Specifically, when we adopt Huawei MEC in Haier project, the analysis based on machine vision was removed from the traditional IPC deployed in on-site factory to MEC platform installed in Haier computer room. The machine vision is used in Haier factory for complete machine inspection, box body inspection, and inner case inspection and so on. Because usually machine vision APP requires a high uplink bandwidth, our MEC provides bandwidth connectivity and bandwidth management module to satisfy such requirements, and also APP enablement support a rapid launch and intelligent service management. So next page. To summarize the work we have done, especially the advantages of 5G MEC plus machine vision, we compared the traditional solution and the 5G solution. The traditional method means industrial cameras and IPCs can be connected by wide cables, which requires a long deployment period, longer than 1 month, and the cable length, which is less than 30 meters, significantly limits the deployment flexibility. Second, one-to-one deployment requires large on-site space that Each IPC usually occupies 2 or 4 square meters. Moreover, the isolated updates on industrial computers require complex OEM and application cannot be flexibly updated. In contrast, 5G MEC plus machine vision provides faster deployment at day level, no existing IPC on site anymore, so with zero space taking. Cloud-based processing capabilities breaks the limitation of computing power. Unified control and management and unified automatic updates allow flexible application upgrades and simplified operation and maintenance. So as a result, not only the cost, but also the efficiency and the quality can be improved. So as above, this is the introduction from my side. Next, I will hand over the session to my partner from China Mobile, Yufei. She will bring you some first information. Hi, Yufei, are you ready?
Hi, I'm online here. I'm ready. Next slide, please. Yeah, thanks, Jennifer, for sharing. I will do more share about the industrial collaboration. So the IoT is an enormous and complex ecosystem that requires a joint efforts and close collaboration of operators, vendors, and enterprises. So China Mobile is committed to promote the prosperity of the edge computing and IoT ecosystem. China Mobile launched the Pioneer 300 action at MWC Barcelona last year, which means 100 edge computing nodes, 100 API, and 100 industrial partners. So far, concentrate on this action. We have expanded 108 partners, performed 62 MEC technology trials covering 7 vertical industries, and including this higher smart factory project, which has successfully applied for GSMA POC. We also hosted the MEC development competition to collaborate closely with the third-party innovators and developers. Next slide, please. Crystal, next slide. So in addition to industrial cooperation, China Mobile also seeks to engage in the transformation of network technology, heterogeneous integration infrastructure, platform as a service, and APIs in a way that provides greater value to customers and app developers. The result will be a common architecture with open API that can offer varied edge workloads and with flexible business models. So this page illustrates the China Mobile's edge computing architecture. ECI and ECP will be deployed in millions of customers' premises or access locations, which includes heterogeneous computing resource and the standard API. And ECM is a unified operation platform which supports resource management and app lifecycle management. And NFVO is the unified orchestrator. And next slide, please. Next slide. Hi, Crystal. So this year, China Mobile is now preparing for an end-to-end edge computing open beta test. 5 first cities, including Beijing, Suzhou, will build open beta test zone where developers and other companies can test connected applications like IoT app, self-driving cars, augmented reality, and virtual realities, and so on. And the zone will use 5G connection, and all the infrastructure and platform will follow China Mobile's edge computing standard framework that we just showed in the previous slide. And the components of the open beta launch includes network, ECM, ECP, and ECI. The network technology offers support for 5G connection and with slicing capabilities. And ECM offers support for APP and computing resource lifecycle management. And ECP offers support for over 100 kinds of basic and industrial API. And ECI offers support for virtual machine and container and other computing resource. And so the goal of this open beta test will be to invite developers and other third parties to rapidly test and innovate with us and the right services and right business value in this ecosystem. And we also want to explore the potential business models for developers and other third parties. So this open beta test registration system will go live in Q3 and is open to any developers for free. So next slide, please. So let's get back to this higher POC. China Mobile and Huawei have got a lot of achievements in this higher 5G MEC machine version development last year. We launched the world's first AI plus 5G interconnected factory in July, and we published the world's first 5G and MEC and plus machine version solution in September, and we also won a lot of prizes like Zhanfang Cap 5G application contest first prize and the MEC Best Case Award of ICT Dragon and Tiger List. So in 2020, and Huawei and China Mobile will continue to deploy in IR factory phase 2 and replicate in other factories. So that's all, the end. Thank you.
And actually, we are at the GSMA, and with our partners, we're also very interested in the manufacturing space. So I'm going to give a quick introduction to some of the work we're undertaking in our 5G IoT for manufacturing initiative before we move on to the Q&A. So 5G will bring a step change in terms of the capabilities it brings to all vertical industries. So things like critical applications, high bandwidth applications, and device density are all going to, really, as I said, create a step change, completely different from what we know today. And in terms of the application to manufacturing, starting sort of in the center of the value chain that you can see in front of you, in terms of the factory floor, we really see how the capabilities of 5G and IoT can improve automation, introduce robotics into assembly and into production, also help with inventory management and a lot of real-time applications. But also 5G will really enable the manufacturing and Industry 4.0 sector to move out of the factory floor and build a sort of end-to-end view of their products as they come from sort of raw materials and supply chain through to warehouse and distribution as well. So of course you have all those excellent use cases I just mentioned in terms of sort of your campus connectivity and your factory floor, but also things, for example, like tracking your inputs through your supply chain and then up to distribution, for example, so you can demonstrate that a particular ingredient has been within a particular temperature through its journey, and also, reassure customers and regulators about quality. So we really see how 5G could really revolutionize manufacturing and Industry 4.0. So to that end, we have established a 5G IoT for manufacturing forum. And this forum brings together manufacturers, mobile operators, vendors, industry associations, and all ecosystem players really who have an interest in progressing and accelerating the adoption of 5G IoT for manufacturing. So the purpose and the goals of this forum are to bring those different ecosystem partners together to understand, what are the needs, the requirements, the pain points and the opportunities for manufacturers going forward, and understand how 5G and IoT capabilities can help meet those. So we're looking at identifying key use cases, key benefits, propositions, and also looking at piloting some of those key concepts and opportunities. So if you are interested in this space, I would encourage you to go to gsma.com/IoT/manufacturing to learn more and reach out to us if you're interested in joining the forum. I would mention here that I believe earlier on there may have been a technical problem with some of the slides. So if you are interested in any of the case studies I mentioned earlier around beyond connectivity, or any of the papers we have around capabilities like big data, AI, edge computing, and blockchain, do go to gsma.com/IoT and you'll find all of those resources there. So we move on now to the Q&A. Oh, sorry, before we do that, I would mention that next week, same day, a bit later in the day, so at 2 o'clock British Summer Time, we have a 5G IoT for manufacturing webinar. So the next edition of our IoT WebTalk. And here we will have, once again, a fantastic lineup of speakers focusing particularly on 5G IoT for manufacturing. So we do hope to see you next week. Moving on now to the Q&A. So we've had a few questions come in and we have time to address some of those. So firstly, I'll start with a question around security, quite a broad question around how do you manage security risk. So Brendan, are you able to talk a bit about how you address security on some of your solutions?
I'm certainly not the one to go super deep into that topic, but I would say, I mean, it's obviously one of the most, if not the most, important issues to address, and therefore, when it comes to development, I would say security is very much something that's being built in by design. We have a pretty strong security team within Telia company itself, but also increasingly engaging more and more specialist partners, when it comes to everything from device security to also, of course, the network security itself. But I'm no deep expert in that field, I'm afraid.
But also, it's a good comment on the partnership theme of this panel as well that we mentioned earlier, engaging your partners where you need to. Jennifer from Huawei, do you have any comments on managing security risks with your deployments, for example, in the smart factories?
That's something I hope to have a little bit of discussion with the audience as well. That's why I hope to bring you some experience when we do this trial project at the first time we discuss with customer partners. Not only from security, I can tell you, we indeed encountered challenges when we deploy this project. Not only technical challenges, but also challenges from business ecosystem perspective. For example, as we mentioned before, the machine vision usually require actual high applicable bandwidth that sometimes is very difficult to be fulfilled within current 5G capability. So to make the solution truly commercial, we are applying compression algorithm, especially lossless compression, to reduce the size of the picture taken by the cameras, and as such, reduce the pressure on the 5G applicable bandwidth. So I also noticed several audience asking about the security issue. So we also use advanced firewalls, layered protections, as well as software encryption mechanism to adjust the requirements from our customer and partners about the security. So that's something I can share with you. We do consider the security, and we are in the progress to make this better. We successfully convinced our customer and partners to collaborate with us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jennifer. We've also had a question around the business cases behind some of the use cases that have been discussed today. So, Jan-Rik, are you able to talk a bit about some of the business cases you have behind some of your agriculture solutions?
Yeah, the funny thing is we do not work with business cases anymore. We work on value cases. The thing is that's where I ended my presentation. It's beyond the value. It's also bringing other value towards the community, and that's the focus we have right now. So you might have like the hard figures and the numbers, but it also takes into account like how do you feed the world, and can we contribute there? So it's not only like the harder elements of the financial aspects, it's also the soft elements. And especially when you're in an experimental phase, do not focus too much on the numbers and the number crunching. Try to see and add value from the softer side as well. What I have learned is that by doing so, I actually get to work together with like the brightest minds within KPN and outside of KPN. Due to the fact that the new generation, upcoming generation, of course they're interested in money, but there's a lot more to it. And actually, this COVID-19 virus is showing us that there is a lot more to it.
Yeah, fantastic, Jan-Rik. I really like that angle on sustainability and looking at value holistically as well, the societal health and other aspects as well. Thank you. Yufei from China Mobile, do you have any comments around business cases behind, for example, your smart factories or other use cases?
Okay, we still think this is a complex ecosystem. So in China Mobile, we want to share this into and the value chain together with all the business partners. And we also want to continue to take the advantage of China Mobile's 5G network, brand effect, and integration capabilities to help accelerate the development of this manufacturing and edge computing and IoT.
Thank you very much, Yufei. So I think we've run out of our time, so we don't have time for any more questions. But we have taken note of the additional questions in the chat, and we can respond to those who ask those questions after this session. So I would like to thank our fantastic speakers who have joined us today. Thank you very much for your excellent presentations and your time. And I'd like to thank all our participants as well. I hope you found it interesting, and as I mentioned, do reach out if any of these topics are of interest to you and you'd like to take the conversation further. So thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.